Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to your Daily Penguin. This is our tour through my Penguin Classic wall, book by book, author by author, era by era. For November, I want to do a little bit of concentrating on Penguin nonfiction, and I missed the first day of nonfiction November because the day was entirely giving it over to sneezing. No activity possible otherwise. I managed to get a little writing done in the little windows that I had, but otherwise I was completely miserable and in agony the whole day. Just the whole day from start to finish. So, but that appears not to be true today. And the reason that I'm concentrating on nonfiction here is because of Nonfiction November, a hallowed BookTube event put on by Olive at a Book Olive and a bunch of other great hosts that encourages you to read more nonfiction. And it occurred to me when I was looking at this Penguin wall, what we have left to do. We have a month and a half left of this Penguin wall. That's not enough time to get all the remaining books done. So I thought, why not use November? If that's true, why not use November to concentrate on nonfiction? So we're going to start off our nonfiction March of the Penguins with a Megillah of a piece of nonfiction. We're going to start off with this, The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire by Edward Gibbon. Look at that. Look at the size of that. These are 3 unedited volumes that Penguin Classic did. And this is one of the most famous works of history ever written. It's one of the only works of history ever written whose fame rivals that of the works of history from the ancient world. And it is, Gibbon labored over it. There's a famous creation story about how he sat down on the steps in Rome while he was there, and suddenly the conception for his work occurred to him. That didn't happen, of course. He sat on those steps and thought, my, that was a wonderful piece of salami I just ate. But eventually it occurred to him that he would write a massive history of the Roman Empire from its peak, from what he viewed as its heyday, the Antonines. So the lead up to the Antonines, Nerva and Trajan and Hadrian, and then the Antonines, and that period Gibbon viewed as incredibly happy. An incredible happy way to start. And he started it that way so that he could tear it to pieces. And he takes the story on from there in mind-boggling detail for many, many huge volumes. The first one of which came out in 1776 and was a huge hit. It sold really well. It got everybody talking. And a lot of the people who did the talking, a lot of the critics in the day, couldn't help but notice that The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire in Gibbon's conception had a villain. It was a complex combination of factors, but there was a villain to the piece, and that villain was Christianity. And that thrilled a lot of people and outraged a lot of people. And a lot of other critics noted that the Gibbon relegates scandalous passages, scandalous quotes, scandalous thoughts, not only to footnotes, but often to other languages in footnotes. And that even when he's not doing that, the range of scholarly citations in his footnotes is mind-boggling. It had never been equaled before, and it has amazingly never been equaled since. With the result that The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire is still in print, but look at this thing. That is an undertaking. That is a huge undertaking. There are points in volume 2 and volume 3. This is the Wormersley version. David Wormersley is an author that we've seen on this channel before. His version of Gibbon is by far the best one. You get all of Gibbon's notes. You also get other later annotators, and you get Wormersley's annotations of this thing. And it's great. Absolutely great. But in these volumes, Gibbon, if he feels like it, will take a digression into Dacian architecture or agriculture for 200 pages with fully cited notes and whatnot. It's mind-boggling. It's all of his research boiled down, just poured into these pages in ways that it is unrealistic to think anyone is actually going to want to read. Now, I have a couple of times, and the reason why I have is the same reason why I believe Gibbon survives all this time, and that is the writing. The writing is brilliant. Just amazingly brilliant. No matter what a certain fellow critic of mine once said. A certain fellow critic of mine wrote an essay once, a very winning essay, about how Gibbon is terrible, rhetorically. Not any of his other claims about the church or anything else, but that he's a terrible writer. And that just manifestly isn't true. I don't mean to disagree with the dead, but that is just manifestly not true. His prose takes getting used to, but it is amazing. It's like a work by Bach on the page. But this is still an undertaking. And so, almost from the beginning, almost from the day that the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire was finally published and finished, Gibbon was not in England. He left England to finish the book. And it killed him. For Pete's sakes, it would kill anybody. Almost from the day when those volumes finished appearing, abridged versions started appearing. One volume, Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, started appearing, and they have been a brisk business of people who want to experience at least something of this work, but don't want to encounter 200-page digressions about anything. They don't want to do it. And those are everywhere. Those abridgments are everywhere, and that has resulted in me having a couple of them, even though I love the whole work. I have one here. This is by D.M. Lowe, and this is a Pelican book before it became a Penguin. This has just an inscription there. And see what I mean? This is an abridged Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. And then Wormersley himself did another one with the black spine. And I have both of those. And yeah, I could have many, many others. There have been many, many others. The modern library version is fantastic, for instance. And the reason why there are so many is because there are many different philosophies that you can take on how you want to abridge a work like this. Some abridgers absolutely hate the idea of giving you fragments of anything. So their abridgments are whole chapters picked from various different parts of the whole work. Most abridgers concentrate on the first volume, the earliest part of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, and pick sparingly from the later volumes. Some are okay with fragments, so you'll get an abridger who is really familiar with the whole work of Gibbon, who really loves certain passages, but not necessarily whole chapters or whole meditations. So they'll just give you that. It can make for radically different reading experiences. These abridged ones are. There's a study to be made. Probably somebody's already done it. There's a study to be made of the radically different reading experience that you get from reading a whole bunch of abridgments of this work. But I myself am very glad that Penguin decided to bite the bullet and make an unabridged in these Penguin Classics. This was originally a big, beautiful, hardcover, slipcase box set of enormous things. They weren't comfortable to read. They were so big and heavy. But I'm glad that Penguin made the leap to do this, because as we've seen in this Penguin tour, they don't always do that. Especially with works of history. You'll often get abridgments of works of history that were written as thematic wholes. Or you'll get people skipped completely. There are a couple of histories from around Gibbon's time, maybe a generation later, that were enormously influential and don't have any Penguin volumes. So I'm very happy that in addition to abridged volumes, we also have the complete. And that's how we're going to start off our Nonfiction November March of the Penguins. We're going to start off with The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire by Edward Gibbon. A masterpiece, an incredible thing. Gibbon is amazing to read, just amazing to read. He's the toughest of all tough recommendations, so I don't recommend him usually. And if somebody, over the decades, if somebody comes to me and says, I kind of want to read Gibbon, I know in a minute that they are going to get maybe 2/3 of the way through one volume and just be the stereotypical person lost in the desert with their pants all in tatters, gasping for water and crawling along on the sand under the hot sun. I know they're going to be like that. So I will gently discourage such people and say, well, there are a couple of really good abridgments. Why don't you read one of those first? And if you're completely in love when you're done, well, then you can get the whole. You can get the unabridged. The unabridged is always in print in a number of different editions. I've had a lot of people take me up on that. I've never had a single person finish an abridged version and say, I'd like more. So I don't know what that means for Gibbon, but I do feel that way. Abridgments almost never satisfy me. I almost always want to go back for long stretches with this author. I was strongly considering a reread from front to back of this whole thing for 2020. It didn't happen. Now I'm strongly thinking about it for 2021. But I doubt very much that tomorrow's Nonfiction Penguin, sneezing allowing, will be anything like this monstrous. So you don't need to worry about that. So I'm going to wrap this up for now, and we will reconvene then. Thank you, Book 2.